Mark, you have had many spiritual experiences in your life. When did they begin and how did it all happen? Yes, I'll start by saying that I was born in 1971 and I actually had a nice childhood, my sister and I, both of us. When I was 6 years old, my parents divorced and we moved house. My father was an alcoholic and he remarried rather quickly. My father was never that loving toward me, and that's why I didn't want to see him anymore. So I somehow broke up with him, and it was no longer an issue for me. And that's how I grew up. When I was a little boy, I think I was 10 or 11 years old at the time, it often happened that I couldn't fall asleep because I was frightened. I used to always lie on my side at night, and once when I was lying on my side, I felt a kind of tingling inside me before falling asleep. Then it all felt for me like a kind of balloon that had somehow burst. And that way I was able to get out of my body, whereupon I somehow flew through the window and was able to move over cities, or fly over them, you might say. But I didn't know these cities. Furthermore, I was alone. And as to this fear, it was there all the time. I was constantly accompanied by a kind of strange feeling. Also, I used to have the impression that I somehow knew it all from somewhere. But of course, I had no idea. More often, I often had the feeling that I was losing myself. But somehow I used to find my way back into my body, even when it was difficult sometimes. The whole thing lasted about a year, and I actually never spoke to anyone about it, because I thought that it was all just a bad dream or something like that. But over time, it all stopped. Later on, when I was a bit older, I started at the age of 13 smoking weed, drinking alcohol, and starting my first LSD trips with some of my fellow boyfriends. We had our mopeds, and most of the time we were outside. We did a lot of nonsense together. Things got worse and worse. And at school, I couldn't concentrate anymore. So things suddenly went downhill. In 1986, a lot of heroin came to Switzerland via the Balkans. And as a result, we all fell into heroin, and many of my friends died from it. It all went on like this until 1993, when I had mutated into a real junkie. Living on the streets a lot, I was often in Zurich, also in Bern. I sold drugs and bought drugs elsewhere. Thereafter, I sold them again. I also was burglarizing. So I was leading a real junkie life. It all was very difficult. I wanted to get away from it, but I didn't know how. I didn't have the opportunity to go to therapy, which would have helped me. I was visiting various therapy centers, but I couldn't find a suitable one. So it went on that way, and only in 1993, it was winter, a social worker gave me the address of a Christian organization caring for poor people in the mountains of Colombia. And there I could go, but I didn't tell anyone there about my drug addiction. So they didn't know about it. Otherwise, they probably would never have taken me in. This was something that was clear, and that's why I didn't say anything. But I thought to myself, okay, go there, do your detox there, then everything will be fine again. Well, that's what I thought. I flew there, and I arrived in Bogota in December with barely rudimentary knowledge of the Spanish language, maybe a little, because I had learned some Spanish beforehand. Well, then I got there, and a gentleman, a Frenchman, who was a pastor, picked me up. We got into the car, and during a 3-hour drive, he told me how he came to be a pastor. He was apparently a former soldier in the French army, and he was in the war against Algeria. And there he got a bullet in the heart from a rifle, and he told me that he was saved by Jesus. And I thought, well, if he can experience this, then this should be possible for all of us. At least, that's what I thought. We then closed the subject and didn't continue conversing. We then arrived, and on the first day I felt fine, of course. I could still walk a bit and was still good on my feet. But the next day was a disaster. I felt very bad because I was already on withdrawal and in need of heroin, but I didn't have any, and I couldn't do anything. I was incapable of doing anything. And this man, I can't remember his name, he got so upset with me and said to me, if I had known what's on with you, I would never have taken you in. And this hurt me so much that I thought, I can't stay here. I have to get away from here. After lunch, I went to my room and wrote a letter. Oh God, if you do exist, please help me. I can no longer cope with my problems. Then I folded up the letter and put it in my backpack, whereupon I took off through the window. I then reached the village by hitchhiking, where I bought a bus ticket to Bogota, the capital of Colombia. The bus ride took 2 to 3 hours, and of course, I only had one thing on my mind during the bus ride, and this was heroin. But I knew that there was no heroin in Colombia. At the time, only cocaine. But since I was also addicted to cocaine, my only thought was to get hold of cocaine as quickly as possible. And on arriving there, I looked around a bit, and I soon met some young people. I approached them, and so I immediately made contact with the young people there, who sold me cocaine, whereupon I took a hotel room and started to take the cocaine there. To begin with, the cocaine wasn't that good, which quite disappointed me. So I thought to myself, what a bummer. No good cocaine in Colombia. That's not possible. So I started looking for it myself. Then one night, maybe it was the same night, I can't remember, I found some really good cocaine. It was really good quality. I also had purchased syringes, so I went to my hotel room where I consumed the stuff. And in this way it went on for a few days. I was also robbed, probably by a friend I had met there, who somehow got hold of my money in the hotel. So with very little money left, I was back on the streets again. So I went back to the hotel by cab, but the driver stopped in the parking lot and didn't leave. I thought to myself, that's strange. Why is the taxi driver staying there? So I then went into my room, and suddenly I heard from everywhere that the police were there. I also heard outside in the corridor, so I thought, what's going on here? I'm finished now. I'm going to jail. So I went to the toilet, and I saw it was blocked. Someone had put some cardboard in the toilet, and consequently I couldn't flush certain things away. And this was instantaneously clear to me, and I thought, oh, now it's over for me. So I dissolved all the cocaine and set myself the final golden shot, because that way I didn't want to live anymore. That's why I took this golden shot, thinking to myself, now it's finally over. Suddenly I felt as if my heart was tearing. I couldn't breathe any longer, and I shot up, backwards. And that was it. And suddenly I felt my soul shooting upwards like a rocket towards outer space, where I could see the stars and other things. And it went so fast that I couldn't stop it at all. I wanted to stop it. Somehow it hurt so much. It wasn't pleasant. And I was so scared. But somehow I knew this place. I recognized it as the same place I had experienced back then during my spiritual experience as a little boy. It was all the same feeling as well, only this time everything went much faster and didn't stop. And suddenly I felt a hand at the top right, a huge transparent hand that was stopping me. Then I saw a huge face. It was the bearded face of a stern-looking man, but only its contours could be seen. Otherwise, the whole face was somehow transparent, so that the stars could be seen through it. His whole appearance looked like a drawing in space, and the stern-looking man said to me, "Mark, it's not your time yet. You need to get back into your body. You still have a mission. Your life is not over yet. You have to have faith, trust in yourself, and trust in me." And I couldn't say no to that. I couldn't, because this was an order with immediate effect. So he was a hard man indeed, and this hand pushed me back again. I was moving backwards then, at first like I was walking, but then it went down with over-dimensional speed, comparable to a rocket. I somehow ended up in my room. I heard voices of people saying, "He's dead," even though I didn't see anyone. Suddenly, I was back in my body and was hardly able to breathe. I was lying on the floor in a position like Jesus on the cross, and I could hardly breathe. And the whole time, I only had one thought: you have to report about it. Do report about what you experience. And this was a thought I had in my head the whole time, even though I couldn't move, and I felt like nailed. In the morning, then, I somehow was able to get up. I didn't know what time it was. Anyway, I went straight to the German embassy. I practically had no money left. I didn't know how I was going to pay for the hotel room, nor did I know how to book or rebook my return flight ticket. So I went to the ambassador and I said to him, when I got there, "My money has been stolen and I would like to go back to Switzerland." The ambassador then helped me by giving me $400 to pay the hotel bill and rebook my flight. At the hotel, I paid for the few days, and as to the rest of the money, I just had one thought: I still need more cocaine. So I went back out on the street and bought some cocaine, and after a few more days, I again had no money left. But now I realized that I really had a problem. So I went back to the embassy and told the ambassador my story. Not everything, of course, but I told him that I had a drug problem and that he had to help me, and would he please send me back to Switzerland. He then did so. He rebooked my flight and arranged everything else somehow. So I then was able to fly back to Switzerland that same evening or the next day. I can't remember exactly. And arriving in Switzerland, I still had some money somewhere, probably hidden somewhere in my backpack. I still had about 50 or 100 Swiss francs. I don't remember exactly. The money was hidden in my backpack. On arrival in Geneva, my first thought was, of course, Now I again need drugs, so I'm going to go to Zurich. So I took the train from Geneva to Zurich without paying for a train ticket. Luckily, there was no ticket inspector there. So I got there and was running as fast as I could, straight to Letten. It was at night, just before Christmas. Lots of junkies were there, and I felt at home again, because this was my place, where I used to feel always comfortable and at home. I met some friends, one of them living in the city where I was living. So we chatted a bit. We dissolved the dope and had a shot. Thereafter, she went away. Suddenly, I heard a man next to me shouting, "Overdose, overdose, ode, ode." That's what they used to say when someone was dying and was in need of the paramedics. Well, my first thought was for Jesus. So I remembered what I had experienced some time ago, and I felt I quickly should run to this man who had declared this overdose, which I did, and he actually was all alone. So I took his hand, knelt down before him, and said, "You must believe in Jesus." Thereupon this young man got up, kind of looked at me, then leaving without asking or saying anything, even though the paramedics were already there, but he just got up and was gone. So I thought to myself that it's really true that Jesus is there and helps whenever you need him. Afterwards, I returned to my city, where I had a total crash. I could no longer do anything. I had really fallen into a hole that I couldn't get out of. However, I found a place in therapy with an organization in Spain, but this organization was not recognized by the social welfare office in my city. They didn't pay me anything, but I was taken in by this organization for free, and I was allowed to stay there for 5 years. Of course, I was working there. I felt very comfortable there, and I came back healthy. Whenever you were consuming drugs, did you also have some experiences like the one you had in Colombia on the occasion of your near-death experience? Well, no, I didn't have any experience like that with drugs. You do have kind of hallucinations with LSD, but the near-death experience wasn't a hallucination. It was true. It all was really true, truly real. How did it develop after your arrival in Switzerland? When I was back in Switzerland, I was doing very well for a while. I got married and was quite happy, and I thought that my time with drugs was over and that I didn't need them anymore. I also felt healthy, and that way we were living together. Then suddenly my wife broke up with me. She no longer wanted to have anything to do with me, and after 7 months, she left me. So I was then alone again, and my thoughts, of course, were back on the drugs. This was the only thing I wanted. I wanted to take drugs again. One evening, mind you, I had really stopped consuming drugs because it was too difficult for me to get hold of drugs at that time. But despite everything, for me, they were like something forbidden. And I didn't want to relapse. I didn't have any drugs on me either. Moreover, there was no one around to give me any. Well, I was in a bar on that night when a karaoke evening was taking place every Tuesday. I was having a drink at the bar, and suddenly I heard a voice singing, and this singing was like a heavenly song, and something inside me said, "Go to this woman and talk to her." And after she had finished singing, I went up to her and I said, "I'm sorry, but I just have to tell you something. You have such a beautiful voice." And this woman was about the same age as I. about 30 or 33 years old. And she was looking at me saying, "I have a message for you." Then she took my hand and we circled around the hustle and bustle to a place where it was a little more quiet. And then we sat down together somewhere. I don't remember where it was exactly. Anyway, we sat together. Then she took both of my hands. As if we were praying, we held each other's hands. Whereupon she said, "Close your eyes." And the moment I closed my eyes, I felt a love I have never felt in my life before. It was a love filled with light and warmth, just simply indescribable. Thereupon, I saw a huge golden cloud coming down from the sky, and this was an indescribably golden color. Let me just put it that way. And from inside this cloud, you could hear the music of trumpets and a singing. What a heavenly singing. It sounded as if the music was being played just for me. And at the same time, I felt Jesus. I knew he was there. I didn't see him, but I felt him. And suddenly I heard around me and within me, "We are so happy to see you again." This conveyed such joy to me. So I thought, I'm finally seeing them again. And even though I didn't know them, I felt them. I finally was seeing them again, and it was as if they were my family, as if they knew me. And they were thousands of people, thousands of voices. And when I opened my eyes, I was still holding the lady's hands, and she too opened her eyes. So I looked at her asking, "What's this all about?" And she replied, "God." So I was a bit stunned about her reply. Then everything was gone again, and I no longer felt that love either. It was all suddenly gone. We still continued chatting, and she told me that she is a medium, and that she knows unlimited love, and that love is a sphere, a transparent sphere with fire inside, a ball consisting of fire. She told me a lot about this fireball, but I myself didn't really know what to do with it. Then we exchanged our phone numbers. We still had very simple cell phones back then, each with just simply a phone number. So we exchanged our numbers. The next day she called me saying, "Marc, there's still something I have to do with you." And even though I was wondering what this could be, I agreed, and we met in a restaurant and had a coffee. She then said, "Marc, you have to come to me. I still have something very important for you." First, I was very skeptical because I still couldn't really believe in something like this. I used to think I just was imagining things like this. But nevertheless, I still decided to come along with her, and so I did, for I had a good feeling about her, and indeed had experienced something with her that I had never before experienced with anyone else. She said, "It's not that you are supposed to fall in love with me." I replied that I wasn't going to fall in love, and this wasn't the case anyway. So we arrived at her home, and she then darkened her apartment because it was daytime. And when everything was darkened, she lit a candle in the hall, where there was then a room. The door to the room was open. The candle was burning and was 10 yards away. I was sitting on a bed, and she came behind me and hugged me like this, like a mother hugging her child to her in order to protect it. And while she was doing this, that love, this indescribable love, it was there again. There was just only this outpouring of love between us somehow. But suddenly, just at the same moment, I first only saw a face, Then I felt a grimace looking at me, somehow enviously and very excitedly, its gaze comprising all evil. That way it was looking at me, then hurrying up and away, the candle thereby falling down. And of course we both were very surprised by this incident. She later told me that she was happy to have met me because she herself had started to have doubts about her, how do you say, her gift of mediumship. Yes, mediumship, exactly. And I had obviously helped her to find her way back to where she was supposed to serve. I was still in contact with this medium afterwards. We met a few times, and I kept feeling this unlimited love every time we met. And I don't remember exactly, but this unlimited love and this unlimited knowledge lasted for about 2 weeks. Through it all, I even met my father. I was able to hug him and forgive him. And as I said, this unlimited love lasted for about 2 weeks. Thereafter, it vanished, and I have never, ever felt it since. Mark, did you still have yet another experience? Yes, about a year later, we went to a creek one day with some friends where we sometimes used to meet. We used to meet up in this same place at weekends in summer, and there was a waterfall about 100 yards away from us that was in fact very dangerous, and everyone knew this waterfall. There was a vortex in the waterfall which could pull you down and under the rocks, and everyone in this place knew about this danger. Some have had bad experiences there, but no one as of yet has drowned, at least that I know of. Well, we were sitting there having a picnic and enjoying it, and it was about noon or 1 o'clock in the afternoon when I suddenly saw some children standing at the top. There were 4 children, black children, 3 boys and a girl, each of them wearing swimming trunks, and we asked ourselves what they were doing there all alone. Funny, what are they doing there? That's what we asked ourselves. I let my feet dangle in the water a bit, so the waterfall was now behind me, and as I said, about 100 yards away, and then I suddenly felt something vibrating inside me. Thereafter I heard a sound like brrr. I turned around and saw one of the boys over there by the waterfall, and instinctively I knew something was going to happen. I took 2 friends of mine and we went there. I said to them, "We have to go there. Something is happening over there." Then we all were running there together as best and as fast as we could. There were stones and other obstacles on the way there, and when we got there, we saw the boy with a tennis ball in his mouth, nervously fiddling with it, and higher up I saw 2 other kids sitting there, the girl and a boy. They were crying, and we, then realizing that one was missing, knew that one of them might be underwater, so we dove in, but we didn't see anything. Then we came back up, we dove down a second time, and when coming back up again, a friend held up the boy he had pulled out of the water. The boy had been blocked under the rock by the vortex. He was also blocked by the pressure of the water. And like this, we couldn't see him at first, because his skin was black and it was dark underwater. But luckily, he was wearing red swimming trunks. So our friend could see him and pulled him out. When we got him out of the water, the first thing he said was, "Thank you for saving my life." Then the police and the ambulance arrived. Also his father came to thank us, and so on. I had already received information about this danger beforehand in the form of a premonition. What kind of information was it? I felt something was wrong, that I had to go there, but I didn't know exactly what it was, because the only thing I saw was this boy. Furthermore, I had another experience with my mother's boyfriend, who had died in a car accident 2 years ago. Previous to this accident, I had been accompanying my daughter to a riding lesson 5 miles away from the accident site. Straight ahead, about 5 miles away from where my daughter had her riding lesson, I was sitting there on a tree trunk, and I was looking toward the accident site, thinking, I still have to phone Max. His name was Max. And a voice inside me said, no, don't do that. Call him later. And so I did so. I did not call him. And suddenly I saw a kind of star-shaped light up by the chimney on the roof of a house. The sun had already set, so I didn't understand why there was a light shining so brightly by that chimney. That's what I really didn't understand. As I was sitting there, suddenly an awful smell was wafting around me. It smelled like death. So I looked around, wondering what might be going on here. Then I got up, went to pick up my daughter. We got into the car, and we even were driving past the accident site. We even saw it. And my daughter said, "Come on, Dad, let's stop and see what's going on here." But I replied that we are not allowed to go there and that there was a roadblock because this was an accident site. And somehow later on, we were informed that Max had had an accident there 2 hours before. And I suddenly felt Max as if he was inside of me. When we were at home with the family, where we were all together, I felt that Max was with me. And he said to me, "Mark, I would like to see you all together, holding hands again." Which we did then. Thereupon his voice inside me said that he loves us, but that he now had to leave and wash himself. Then he was gone. Of course, my children and my wife at the time didn't believe it. Mark, you have had a long career with drugs. What would you say to young people if they were in danger of taking such drugs? Heroin and cocaine have the potential to destroy ourselves, as well as the family around us, even friendships. All of that will be destroyed by these drugs. You would even sell, maybe, your own mother. And what's supposed to be good, after all, about this drug, even if it's very nice at the beginning, when feeling like Superman, or feeling yourself somehow flying, free from all worries. But in reality, this is not the case. Rather, it's a trap that you fall into. In the beginning, you forget about all the problems you have. But others come along, namely the problems caused by this drug addiction. And that's what will be destroying everything around us, as well as ourselves. And what impact did all these experiences have on your worldview and on your life? I got off the hard drugs pretty well. I never really crashed, and I never touched heroin again. I took cocaine a few times, but now it no longer has the same effect on me. And at some point, I couldn't see cocaine any longer. And now I don't like to see or smell it any longer either. For me, this topic no longer exists. I also see the world very differently now. I feel differently. And as to my worldview, I think that there is a lack of love on earth, the love for ourselves included. And I would like this love I felt back then with this medium to come back. But unfortunately, it has never come back again. Do you believe in life after death? I believe in life after death. I'm even convinced of it. I believe in Jesus. I believe in God. I believe in angels. I believe in the good. Mark, thank you very much for this interesting interview. Thank you very much.